Here in these valleys and mountains, countless battles and skirmishes were fought, as far back as the time of King Decebal, and as recently as the Habsburg Empire.
This is maybe the most beautiful natural arch I've seen in Romania, and it's 2/3 of the way up a cliff. But you can understand and appreciate why this region is so rife with folklore and legend. It goes back as far as the Dacians. When the Romans were attacking towards Samisegetusa, they came up through these valleys, and they tell stories of how the Dacians would appear, rain down hell on them in the form of spears and rocks from above, and then they'd disappear into the hill, as if by magic, and pop out somewhere else. In actual fact, they were using this network of caves that runs throughout these hills. You can see many of them on the far side of the valley over there. But much later on, during the time of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the haiducs, or bandits, would take advantage of these caves and these mountains to hide from the authorities. And they'd have camps in places like this, probably lighting fires here, spending nights here, and also dispensing judgment here. That cliff over there on the far side with a very long drop was known as the court of the haiducs, and anyone who betrayed them or any traitors in their midst were marched to the edge of that cliff and thrown unceremoniously off it. A bit like the pirates' tradition of walking the plank, but with an awful lot further to fall. There's a particularly lovely story where the head of the haiducs for a while here was called Papură Vodă, and the Austro-Hungarians were desperate to catch him and his merry band of men. And they'd sent soldiers into the hills and the forests to try and catch him, and they always killed all the soldiers. The Austro-Hungarians thought, we're losing too many soldiers, let's just forget it, because we're never going to catch these people. So they decided to hire mercenaries instead, and they advertised for mercenaries to come and help hunt down the haiducs. So what did Papură Vodă do? He and his haiduc friends all signed up as mercenaries for the Austro-Hungarians to catch themselves, which of course they never did, but they carried on getting paid to be haiducs and living their life up here in the hills. Which is absolutely hilarious. And in fact, in the end, the Austro-Hungarians were herded out of here because of the power of the haiducs. They formed a militia, and effectively they evicted them from this area.
Below me is the Cheile Oltețului Gorge, believed to be the narrowest canyon in Europe, with only 70 centimeters at its slimmest point. To access it, you have to descend on a vertiginous path that winds down beside an overhead bridge. From there, you are committed to a 2-kilometer scramble and freezing wade along the riverbed. With no way out until you reach the other end.
This reminds me of a game we used to play as kids, rock hopping. The secret is to try to cross the river as many times as possible. You get a point every time you cross, but once you slip and go in, you lose. So far, I've managed to stay dry. If I was Bear Grylls, I'd probably tell you that this is one of the most dangerous environments known to man. A rock, boulder, or tree could land on my head at any minute. Meanwhile, a storm is building up in the mountains, and it could precipitate a flash flood that will come barreling down this canyon and sweep me away. I have to go very fast because every minute here is potentially lethal. However, we don't do that around here,
So let me confine myself to saying that was a very pleasant stroll.